Okay, we are live. Hey there, everybody. This is
All
Doc.
right.
Um, want to thank you and welcome you to, I guess, the fourth of the uh, Black Hat Community Premium webinars. I'm really excited that you're here. Today's guest is Colby Wren, and he is recognized by many as a god in this business for his work with spam and tiering structures. Colby and I met together a little bit earlier this morning. We went over a little bit of his presentation and kicked around some strategy, and I have to tell you, I was pretty excited by the time we ended our little Skype call because I can't wait for all you guys to get the 911 on all this stuff. So, hey, Colby, it's Joe and Doc. Welcome.
Doc, what's going on, man?
It's great to
Welcome,
have you, man.
guys.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to do this because I know it's a hole right in the middle of the day, but I'm sure everybody's going to be real happy and super appreciative.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people forget is sometimes just writing down your process can also help you find things to add, but also things that you probably shouldn't put on there and need to change up, get a little bit more frequent.
Well, the presentation looks great. I think what I'm going to do is, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go ahead and change the presenter screen over.
All right.
But one of the things I'd like you to do, because I think it's important for all of our members that we're all at different levels of experience with SEO and certainly with
All right.
the black hat aspect, is maybe reach back in time and tell people a little bit about what got you into this business, what you did early on, and how you've sort of progressed over time. I think people would find that helpful.
Good deal. Well, I'm also another one of the young guns. I know James went before me, and James is a young guy. He's very talented. And when I started, I was 20 years old. I was in college at Georgia Tech. I was still playing baseball there because before I did SEO, I played college baseball.
Okay.
So most of my time initially was taken up with baseball, but I met my business partner online playing video games. We played League of Legends and a few others together, and he would always be like, "Yeah, man, I'm on today," and he would be on the next day and the next day, and I'm like, "What the hell do you do all day that you're on the computer?" And he was like, "Well, I'm a freelance internet marketer," and you know, I knew that there were rankings in Google, and I knew that I was pretty good at social media marketing at that point, but I really never dabbled in SEO. So he lived in Austin, Texas, so I kept flying out there in the off season, meeting with him, starting working on freelance projects with him, got a few internships my sophomore, junior year in college, and 2 years ago we started an agency here in Atlanta.
Okay.
Um, since then, we bootstrapped the whole thing, all cash, no debt, still no debt, still all cash, and we're making our way through there now. We just hired our operations guy from Harvard over the summer, so he came in and really cracked our skulls a little bit, making sure we're doing things the right way.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you need. If you don't have somebody that can kick you in the ass, then you don't have anybody that can keep you accountable. And he's really done that. But we started dabbling in Black Hat SEO about 2 years ago. My business partner was a die-hard Matt Cutts white hat for so long. He hated seeing people beat him with just links and the worst on-site and the worst sites he'd ever seen. So one day I remember we bought Magic Submitter, and we started playing with Magic Submitter. Then we started playing with GSA, and we've learned that if you're a good developer and you can understand how software works, you can break it down and make it into an efficient process, and that's what we've done. We've been selling spam online for about 18 months now, and we typically bring in between 20 and 30,000 a month just from spam and white label link building services before we even touch client money. So that covers office costs, and the rest is profit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really how I got my start, and been doing it ever since. I just love testing and testing and testing because you learn so much about the search engines.
I think it's great to have people. I'm glad you did this because, there are so many different aspects to SEO in general, but even Black Hat subdivides into these categories where we call, people the spam people and the PBN people and what have you. But I know we very
Yep.
rarely stick to just one category, and I know it spills over for you from the spam into other aspects. So,
hmm
jump into your presentation and tell us a little bit about where it crosses over for you, what tools you like the best. I mean, let us have the good stuff.
Will do. Will do. And I know we went through this about an hour earlier today, and I took some things from you, and you took some from me.
Yeah,
So let's get this started.
let's do it.
Well, first, I want to start with the first thing anybody should ever spam are parasites. I tell this to every single person that I've ever done GSA coaching with, that I've ever sold link packages to, and anybody that's really in their first step of link building. Because if you can't rank a parasite, you can't rank a money site. And you can get away with a lot more on a parasite as far as link velocity, link volume, anchor text, when you have a high domain authority route to play with. I have the platforms that I specifically use right now in the next slide, but let me give you guys a little bit of what I send at Parasites just so that you know. I typically send 2-week intervals of links. So I'll take a 14-day window, load up my campaign into GSA. Let's say it's for a YouTube video. That YouTube video is going to be spammed with about 500 to 1,000 links a day for 14 days. At the end of that 14 days, I take about a week break, and I think Terry Kyle has been quoted calling it baking. I call it marinating. And you'll see that the parasite just needs a little bit of time to catch up and get the links. In this area, we'll notice where it first will pop up. If in 2 weeks that parasite doesn't pop up, take it off, flip on a new one, because you don't need, if a parasite's not ranking within 2 weeks, not on page 1, I'm talking about a first showing. So if it gets between rank 50 and 100, it should be good to go.
Gotcha.
And that's for pretty competitive terms. Long tail terms with just basic onsite, I know you were telling me about this earlier, Doc, you can have those things pop up in top 10 within 3 days.
Yeah.
But that's just a completely different monster.
Sure.
So how much volume? I would say between 8 and 10,000 links over 2 weeks. Give that a little bit of time to air out, see where you show up, and then add more from there. As far as PBN, SAPE, and social signals are concerned, if you have your own network, I suggest dripping 10 to 20 links at that parasite just to stabilize it. The GSA, what it does well is it gives velocity. And without velocity, you're not going to take advantage of that loophole, which all parasites love. So if you don't have velocity, you're really not going to get up there number 1. With the PBN, you're going to get a good link that can hold some value and actually root in the rankings. If I get a parasite to page 1 with just GSA, I always either add a little bit of private blog network links or a little bit of SAPE, because those are what hold you there. And once they're held there, it's really hard to move them.
Yep.
While I also send social signals because I have a social network. I don't buy Fiverr socials. I don't really use any of the others. We just have our own social network that we had to buy because, well, we had to buy and create because when you're doing 200, 300 orders of spam a month and Fiverr social signals cost $5 a package, you're spending a lot of money. So we had to find a way to bring that in-house and do it on our own, which is actually up the quality.
Great. That's interesting.
Here are some of the platforms that I've been playing with right now. I know Holly, and most of you know Holly Cooper. She kills it with YouTube. I think one of the reasons she also kills it is because Google owns it. It is an entity of Google, and if you were somebody that spammed Vimeos a lot, you noticed in the last year that Vimeos don't do shit anymore because YouTube has completely taken over that market. So choose YouTube, stay away from Vimeo, you'll be good. Storify. Storify is one of my favorite platforms because it can look really, really good. Storify allows you to get pretty creative with your design, and I use Storify a lot. I think one of the only reasons that I don't use it sometimes is because it takes a lot of resources to rank them. Storify is stubborn, but if you have enough authority with PBN links, you'll be golden, because as soon as you get over that authority threshold with Storify, the velocity takes it home to page 1, and you're good. Good, good, good. Weebly is also another one that allows you to have more of a custom feel. It actually feels like a money site having it, but you can also use it as a 301 eventually if it ever tanks. So there is that. That's a major positive of Weebly. Yahoo Answers is a little bit more difficult. Some people can't get their Yahoo Answers to stick. Get your accounts, get them aged. Make sure if you're logging into 100 of them, you've got the right proxies, and eventually you'll get your links to stick once the account gets a little more aged. About.me is also another parasite that I keep using more and more because it keeps showing up in SERPWoo. I don't know if many of you have SERPWoo, but the amount of knowledge that you can get from it is just unbelievable. That's where I've got a lot of these parasites while also testing them by myself.
He said Serp Woo. Holly, I think she
Excuse
knows
me?
it. I'm sorry, Holly was asking the question. Did you say Serp Woo? I think she was making a joke, but I just wanted to make sure. She also, you know what?
Yes.
Not to derail you,
SERPWoo.
Colby, but Holly
Go for
also brought up S3 Amazon and Rebel Mouse.
Amazon. The Rebel Mouse have been so spammed that I don't use them anymore, but the S3 buckets on Amazon are awesome.
Yeah, I agree too.
I've got a guy that he's in more long-tail suburban areas, and the S3s look really, really good. They convert really well, and he's doing all lead gen through those right now. So thank you, Holly. That is another good one to add to the list. Here's an example of a, here's an example of a BuzzFeed I had that was ranking for League of Legends. It's big terms, 135,000 and 3,600, and that one ranked in about 4 or 5 days. And you basically load up 100 long-tail keywords along with the anchors, do as many anchors as you can with them, keep it very, very diverse, and you can look like that. That one was pure spam. There wasn't a single PBN link or safe link, and it lasted about 9 weeks, and slowly plummeted to the ground after that, but it was a hell of a ride while we had it.
Yeah, it looks good. Looks great.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun 9 weeks because League of Legends is such a hot game, and that 135,000 term, those are some fun numbers to look at.
Yeah, I've got a client that does LOL, and he does well. He does really well. It's become super competitive, but it sounds like you know how to use these tools to overcome a lot of that competition anyway.
Yeah, it's. I know Charles was made a League of Legends site towards last year, and the forums are huge. The YouTube videos, you don't even need SEO to really get a lot of traffic in there. So it's a very competitive space, but also pays off well.
Okay, that's all we got for questions right now. Rock on.
Good deal. All right. Well, here let's cover a little bit more direct to site GSA. There are a few ways to do it. Ooh, excuse me, I just shook my desk. But there's ways to keep it more safe and ways to kind of alleviate the headaches that come along with. As soon as an algo comes around, everybody that used GSA goes, well, I knew the algo was coming, but I didn't realize that my links would be disavowed during that time, and I didn't realize that I would have such a loss in rankings. Well, there are ways to protect yourself, but this is definitely not one of them. So if you're a churn and burner at heart, pay attention, and if you are a white hat snob, it's okay. Your time's coming, I promise. So direct to site with volumes. If you're really, really trying to burn a site, and by burn a site I mean really hit it with a lot of volume, rank it fast, rank and bank, rank and tank. This is where it gets complicated. Because if you're using a brand new site, which right now, the only type of site that I would use other than a brand new site is a PR5 plus site that has great, great authority. I did a case study in September where I built 100 pages on a PR6 domain that I bought and did a basic silo, and with just content got them to page 2. Just content. Big terms, nice affiliate. All it needed was links from there to kind of take it home, but this is not the case. These are brand new sites, expired domains, whatever you want. So volumes you need to play with here. You need to be dripping these pretty slowly. This is where you don't want your link profile to be 99% spam and 5% PBN links. You want it to be about 250 to 500 links in a month for GSA. See how many of those stick. Keep the platforms contextual, which there's a tick in GSA to handle all those. Mm-hmm. And you got to make sure that you're dripping. Here, I can't say it enough. Spam in high volumes just trips a velocity filter. And that's where you're going to have your site stuck for 45 to 60 days. So if you keep your volumes low, you're going to be much better off in the long term, just direct to site. Your anchors, I would keep long tails at about 25% total between like 100 long tails. I would keep your brand and URL percentages towards 50%, and salt and pepper with your PBN or SAPE direct to the site with about 5% total over 20 main anchors.
Okay.
It's a little bit, it's not an exact science, but that's how I start every project. It's a good foundation. It lets you know where the site's going to pop up. As soon as you know where it's going to pop up, all you have to do is keep adding anchors from that PBN. You'll be good to go.
Gotcha.
Here's an example of a site that we've been working on since December of 2013. This site actually has rode through many an algorithm, and its backbone is about 75% spam and 25% PBN links. It loses links every single month, and sometimes you'll see a little dip here and there, and those are towards the devalue algos, where we would lose, I would say, 20% traffic for about 2 to 3 weeks. But as you can also see by the graph, it's continuing to go up and up. We're just at a low point right now. We'll probably throw a Loganics package at it because it hasn't had citations or directories. This is just a local site that has been up and down for us for 2 years. Replace links, add a few PBN links, a little bit of citations, directories, videos, and it comes right back up. It's a beautiful system if you know what you're doing. And luckily for us, we just keep knowing what to do.
Colby, what do you find are the predominant types of links that drop off for this, and what kind of mix are you using to replace them?
Well, typically for most of our GSA setups, we use Grinds List, which is from Grindstone.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Grindstone. If you don't, then you should, because he's made more waves in this industry in 2 years than I probably will in my life. But the way his list goes is I was beta testing it for him for almost 6 weeks before he launched. And he kept asking us, what platforms do you guys want? And what do you want to be using? And if you had more of these and less of these, would you be happy? And all we kept saying was, give us more contextuals, give us more socials. And if you can do both of those for us, we'll be a customer for life. And that's exactly what he did. We keep our mix really heavy on contextuals and socials, and then send them just to tier 2 for indexing purposes, not really for blasting purposes. I think there's a misconception that if you build a tier 2, it's tiered link building. But for me, it's just making sure that all my links are going to be indexed. Tier 2s don't have to be Tier 2s don't have to be 50 million blog comments from Scrapebox auto-approved list, $5. They can be 10, 20 links from these platforms and that platform. Some of them will stick, some won't. The ones that don't stick, obviously like blog comments and exploits and URL shorteners, stuff like that, but as long as you keep contextuals and socials as the main in your GSA settings, you'll be good to go, for tier 1 anyway.
Got it. And yes,
Cool.
Holly, I am recording this.
Is she liking what she's hearing, or she doesn't want to?
Yeah,
does she want to correct me?
No, she's had some great feedback. She asked one question earlier I thought might be interesting. Do you schedule, let's see, I guess you were talking about, do you schedule it for 1K verified so you don't do more daily, or just let it go? That was early on. Sorry about that, Colby. It got past me.
So it really depends on the site. There's some of our sites where we're like, all right, if we get 970 or 1,050, things aren't going to go wrong. You know what I mean? So we make sure that we have a daily stop for those very specific projects. Yeah. But for the most part, we just let it go wide open until it hits its verified max. And once it hits its verified max, we just kind of let it go.
Got it.
Just stop it and pause it. Sorry, I got a call coming in the office. I'm just going to hit that. Okay. Yeah. There are very few times where I'm a stickler about specific volumes. That's why I always give ranges. So when I say 8 to 10,000, it doesn't have to be exactly 8,000 or 10,000. It just, those seem to be the ones that move the best for me. Or the ones where I said direct, where you're doing a drip, where it could be 300 to 500 links that month. Because of my filters and the list that I have, I might build 700, I might build 450, but it's going to be very close to those ranges where it's not going to really hurt anything.
Got it.
Cool.
Yeah, all everybody seems pretty happy. The comments are real favorable.
Excellent. Cool. Well, let's go to the next one. So this is by far the most important one for newbies of GSA, and this is the people that these are the same people that start on the Parasites. This is the training wheels of GSA. So existing link profiles. One thing that I do when I buy a brand new blog network domain, obviously I check its metrics, I check its link profile, but I also immediately grab that link profile, parse it out, and throw it into a GSA campaign. Because a lot of times, many people have told me, they're like, yeah, I bought this site, it had great links, this, that, and the other, and about a month later, I noticed that half of them were deleted. So what I do immediately is I grab an Ahrefs report of the backlink profile, throw it into GSA, give each of the links, if there's 100 links in there, I'll give them about 10 to 20 each just to say, hey, I'm thinking about you, are you there? And it's a wake up of the link profile as well as just to make sure all the links are still live. I can tell very quickly if that site's going to be worth it or not to me based on how many links die and how many links are still alive. It's very important to know, because if you don't have the good links to back up your metrics, then you just got a shit site.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. Money sites. So when I get a new client, which I just got one earlier today, the first thing I did was I looked at their link profile. And I said, man, those are some very, very good tier 1s. But they didn't move the needle at all. So I'll take all the tier 1s or all the links in that link profile, parse them by the good ones and the bad, do the exact same thing, first send a 10 to 20 wake up on it just to make sure the links are still live. And from there, once I get all the live links from that are still live, I pick the 10 or 20 strongest. So for the most part, if I'm coming behind a white hat agency, I go, thank you so much for building these great manually created profiles and Web 2.0 links. Now I'm going to spam them so hard that they're going to move the needle. And a lot of times I can have clients ranking in 2 or 3 weeks that way with just a tier 2 to their existing link profile. That alone can rank people. And it's something that not very many people talk about, but it's very, very important.
Got it.
I think with Parasites, I do the exact same thing because a lot of times I'll have a parasite that'll be ranking 3 or 4 months, and it'll suddenly have like a little dip, 20, 25% traffic loss. I can't track all the keywords because if I did, I would have like every guru package of every link checker, and so I try to keep them for the main anchors, and then I'll do a mass SEM rush dump report to make sure I'm not missing any of the long tails. But if there's a dip, I know that the links that parasite had were what was sustaining it, so I'll tier 2 to that entire profile. If that doesn't move it up, then I'll add more links direct, and that seems to do the trick just about every time.
Awesome.
Now, SAPE links. SAPE links are one of my favorite tier 1 links, mainly because they all have a lot of authority. It's a homepage link, and for the most part, some of them have a hard time indexing. And I'm not talking indexing in the hour because everybody wants the links to index in an hour. It doesn't always happen that way unless you've got really strong socials and a very active and fresh site. So with our SAPE links, Daniel or Bash, he and I have been working together for almost 2 years now, and Bash will probably send me 50 orders a month of just tier 2s to SAPE because they index so well with a good tier 2 that there's no comparison. You can run indexification, you can run all the other indexing services, but links index, how do you think indexing services work? Most of them are links and social signals. So,
correct.
At this point, you're doing the exact same thing you would be doing, but you're getting some that'll stick and enhance that link. So,
did you say send tier 1 to your SAPE or SAPE to
No.
tier 1?
I said take the tier 1 that are the existing link profile in SAPE, just like the PBN, Money Site, and Parasites, and send a tier 2 to them.
Got it.
So that's really the best way to index SAPE, and it's also the best way to juice it up because why not? I love sending tier 2. Tier 2 is so fun to play with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room for error, and there's a lot of room for growth.
Yeah, that's what I like about tier 2. It can be so forgiving, and if you're new and you want to practice without creating any lasting damage, tier 2 is an awesome way to do it.
Yes. Yeah, and it's so funny when you say lasting damage because I think of lasting damage every time I go into my first little boot camp or a coaching session with somebody, and they go, yeah, well, I was running it this way for a long time. And I go, well, just send me a list of your sites. And, of course, instead of practicing, they've sent it direct from day one. Because, of course, you're going to be a master of a tool since day one, so you should be able to do it, right? So most of those end up being just completely destroyed sites, and it kind of hurts me a little bit, but that's why I'm telling you guys, practice on tier 2s and practice on parasites for as long as you can. And once you get a good hang of that, then you go into the torture chamber that is direct to money site linking, which that in itself is pretty hard.
Do you want to take a second for a couple of quick questions?
Go for it.
Yeah, these are probably not all that strenuous. Someone asked, would you do these in separate projects with GSA or add the URLs to one project? Because they were talking about when you took over a property.
Oh, when I inherited a client type of thing?
Well, I was thinking about, like, for example, when you buy a PBN domain, a domain you're going to put in your network, and you look at the existing profile and you want to do your thing, how do you do it?
I dump all the URLs into the URLs and I put keywords, and I push go.
Okay, so one
Is
big
that what you're
project.
saying?
So you're talking
One
about
big
one big
project?
project.
Well, one big project to make sure that the links are alive, and I always call it a wake-up because some of those links are like old marriages. They haven't had a good loving in a while.
Definitely.
So they need that link juice to kind of give them a little bit more youth. So once I find out that the links are alive, that's when I pick the top 10 or 20, and that's when I put them in a separate campaign and just run to them about 100, 200 links per property. High D8 properties can take link volume. They can take much more than that, but those are safe volumes to play with that you'll see a return from.
Right. Okay.
Did you have one more for me, Doc?
No, I think you're good. You're ready to roll.
All right. Cool. Well, let's get to Tier Blaster. So this is for all of you people that don't know. I just did mention volumes. So when you're hitting a tier, you can do one of two things. One, you can hit it with too low a volume of links where there will be no noticeable difference if you had not built any at all or if you had built 5. And then there are volumes that can kill your Tier 1, and you don't want that either. So you got to try to find the Goldilocks zone between doing nothing and killing. I know, it sounds like it's pretty easy, but sometimes you'd be surprised. Sometimes properties get pulled. Sometimes properties just can't take it. But if you stay to about 100 to 200 links per property, that's what I call my Goldilocks zone, and that's what I typically stick to.
Okay.
100 to 200 seem to do really well. So no follow or do follows. I get this question a lot because the way we run it with Loganics, we target the strong no follow properties that are more parasite-like. So when we hit them with a Tier 2, there's a possibility they rank, and oftentimes they do. And we know that, but we pick those properties very, very specifically. And then we have the do follows, and the do follows are what really move the mountain. And when you focus the do follows of a good Tier 1, and you can send those a little bit more volume than 100 to 200, but I wouldn't do much more. Mm-hmm. And that's when you'll see with tiers right now, it's taking about 2 to 3 weeks for links to sink in. We have probably 500 screenshots with Loganics in the last 4 months, and 95% of them show movement between week 2 and week 4. So what we've come to the conclusion of is, and what I've been able to, because I've been hitting tiers for a long time, is you're going to see a little bit of a slower impact, but once you hit that 2 to 3 week mark, you're good to go.
Okay.
And hold on one sec. Sorry about that.
Wow, you would be surprised at the number of questions we're getting about asking for a fuller description of how you determine anchor text. It seems like it's on everybody's mind.
Anchor text for what exactly? For
I think for a lot of these examples, yeah, people are I guess they're hesitant to.
So that's one thing. I think you and James talked about it. It's the same as when James was talking about SAPE, and he said if you have 25 links that are all law and 5 that are SAPE, you're good to go. I wouldn't say you're good to go there, but what I would say is that it'll blend in better. With Tier 2s, anchors and relevance, I'm asked that question all the damn time because, I mean, quite frankly, if you're going to send a Tier 2, you got to have some keywords to scrape for, right? So if I'm doing a tier to one of my blog network sites and it's a payday loans site that I'm linking to, and my anchor is payday loans online, right?
Yep.
I don't really want to give that PBN site a lot of payday loans anchors. Payday loans anchors, Viagra, Garcinia, all those are used in negative SEO. So I try to scrape for something more generic, like finance or credit or just something very broad that encompasses it, but isn't exactly what it is. So most of my tier 2s are just brand URL and generic anchors. I don't typically do any keywords. I haven't found a correlation for ever using anchors on tier 2, but some people like it. Some people say it's more relevant. I say that's bullshit because it is. You just need links. They need to index. They need to point to that tier 1. That's all you need. And the tier blaster with contextuals, contextuals just stick the longest. That's the main reason I use them. I also think that they're the best platform that GSA has to offer, and that's why I use it, because they last long. The link loss effects don't really come into focus as quickly, and that just has more long-term benefits for everybody using it.
Got it.
Did that answer the anchor text question?
It answered it for me. Holly asked if and I said yes, but she said, so tier 2 is generic, tier 1 is more relevant, then that's what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, tier 1's going to be the money anchor if that's what you're doing. Tier 2, I just really don't like giving anchors on tier 2.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no real reason for it, because you're just going to screw up that site's link profile.
Okay.
And that's what a lot of people were upset at me, because the amount of SAPE links that they were seeing with my spam on it when they were going through, they're like, man, you've killed like 100 SAPE sites. And I'm like, I've definitely spammed much more than that. But there's so many new sites added to it all the time. I mean, if you scrape it every day, you're getting new links. So there's no big deal there. But that's why I try to keep it, generic links, brand, and URL, just so that it doesn't hurt the link profile in any way.
What's your target price for SAPE? That's a Holly question. That's an interesting one.
What do you mean, like my target price? I don't buy my SAPE. I have Bash buy all my SAPE. He'd be the better one to talk to, but I know I try to stay away from low PR or fake PR SAPE, and I try to go for the big dog links. I'd rather have 5 or 10 PR5, PR4, PR6 with 20 to 50 trust flow than 10 PR0s with a slightly manipulated trust flow of 15 to 30. So
yeah, and it's worth mentioning.
It's worth mentioning when I use SAPE, I spend money.
You really, when you're dealing with really high quality SAPE links, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck.
Absolutely, and Bash and I can attest to it. I mean, Bash owns half of the UK legal market, and it's been with my spam and his SAPE for 18 months.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to say for SAPE. I mean, I know Charles was owning UK SEO with just a ton of SAPE, and they weren't even the high quality ones. But now I will say, spend a little bit more money on your SAPE links, buy a little less volume, a little higher quality, and you'll thank me later, because that'll move the needle.
Totally
if it doesn't,
agree.
send a tier 2.
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with links like that, you're probably moving the needle, period.
Got it.
Cool. All right, well, I'll continue unless there's any other questions.
Nope. I'm going to hit some Mountain Dew. You keep on rolling.
Go for it, man. All right, well, here are the good tier platforms that I myself use every single day. Anything that's got a good high DA profile link or any high DA contextual link is fair game for tiers. I do like to interlink my tiers, and I put them in a spreadsheet, and I make sure that if my socials and my contextual links can intermingle, I've seen much higher ranking results doing that. I would focus only the do-follow links with the tier 2, because I've done 50 Web 2.0s with only 10 do-follow and spammed only the do-follow 100 times, and versus spamming the entire link profile of 50 of them, and every single time it works better with just do-follows. Every single time. And I can't harp on that enough.
Yeah.
You should try to hit some of the no follows that are ranked really well, and those are more of the Parasite platforms. But they're also a good-looking link in the link profile too. So a no follow never hurt anybody, unless you used it for negative SEO. But I didn't say that.
Yep.
Citations and directories. This is really the backbone of Loganics, and the way we do it, there's a few things I can't talk about because that's all Adam's side that he tries to keep close to the chest. But we do exactly what I just said. We pick the best do-follow properties. He puts them in a list. He sends them to me. We pick the no-follows that are good links and also slightly of parasite descent, I will say, and we'll send to those as well that are the no-follows. And within that, there's a good bit of interlinking that really does well. And the more natural we can interlink, the better. This Tier 2 kicks in about week 2 to week 4. You're good to go. Now, social profiles. I know Andrew at Marketer Center has a service for this. Adam and I with Loganics have one as well that we're launching pretty soon, I believe. But the best part about social profiles is I've never really met a bad one. There's a couple that I sometimes stay away from because they don't really do much for me, but I got to kind of keep those to me because that's under NDA stuff.
Sure.
But with social profiles, they're lovely backlinks, and they take a ton of spam. I know Holly and I were talking about this, I think, a few months ago, where Pinterest, I was spamming only Pinterests for about a year, and Pinterest could absorb more spam than almost any parasite I'd ever played with, but it also manipulated trust flow better than any parasite I'd ever played with. I was spamming Pinterests that were linking to my money sites, and my trust flow would go up 15 or 20 points just over a 2-month period. Lovely. So point your social profiles, send them a good Tier 2. It still manipulates trust flow. You'll thank me later. Does really well. I really like social profiles right now. They're a clean link source, and if you get them made, try to make them a little more high quality. They'll last longer. Save links, I think I've covered that pretty extensively. There's a couple ways to do each of them. If it's one of my projects, I can do 3 or 4 campaigns for a fraction of the cost of what it would cost other people to just run one. So having my spam in-house has really, really opened the doors to a lot of really good growth. Save links just happens to be one of my favorites to spam. I just can't say enough good things about them. Yep. If you have high risk tolerance. PBN links. This is something I hear a lot. People go, why would you spam your PBN links? And I told Doc this a little bit earlier. Some of my PBN boosting methods are different than what other people do. Some people say, well, I'm just going to send 1,000 links at that internal page that has my contextual link in it, right? No, that's not how we do it. We make sure that every new page to our PBN is built an equal amount of Web 2.0s and social profiles that are unique. So we try not to use the same ones over and over and over again, though there's a cluster of 15 that we continue using. But then we send those a Tier 2, and doing that increases that page's strength as well as that page's link profile. So we're not exactly tiering the PBN links, so you say, but we do have a Tier 1 connected to the PBN links, which we are hitting with a tier. You can tier your PBN links. It doesn't work like it used to. About a year ago, you could rank just about anywhere with 10 strong high PR PBN links and 2,000, 3,000 links to each, but that's also how you kill PBNs very quickly. I had a spam network of 50 sites that we just destroyed over the year. I mean, it cost me $1,000, so it didn't really matter. But at the end of the day, when you're doing as many projects as I am, I mean, my team is building 20 to 30 PBN sites a month just to keep up with all our clients and our spam network, which is only for churn and burn projects. Okay. So we kind of we kind of take the risk out and know that that network is going to get nuked. That's completely fine with us. We understand the risks, but we also keep our client network and our sales network completely separate. So we have 3 networks essentially, one for mass spam, one for clients that are stronger sites, cleaner sites, more locally focused, and the third one that we have is a topical network that it's topical not for strength, it's topical for relevance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've had 1 out of 75 of those sites de-indexed in the last 3 months, so we've been pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I imagine so.
So here is, local is by far our biggest agency side client base, so that's why local is something that I love, but also something that's why I partnered with Adam at Loganics, because he did local a different way than I did, and we were able to combine and really do something great. So there's a couple ways to tackle local. I'll show you a little bit more of a long-term local site. This is basically how I model a lot of my clients, just because it works. If it didn't work, I wouldn't do it, because results are the only thing that matter. Theory and bullshit are great, but until they actually show up with rankings and phone calls, I don't need them. So here's kind of my long-term focus, which if you don't have a PBN, find somebody that's got a good one. I know Doc's got way too many for himself, and I've got way too many for myself, so I know we both end up selling PBN links to certain people that meet our criteria, that have a wallet. And but one thing with local sites is you can look on link profiles of the top 10. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense how people rank, but you look at how they're ranking, you go, all right, well, I can copy it, or I can do something that I know is the best foundation to start every site with. This is what I call my local long-term foundation right here. I do 10 to 20 PBN links. This can be dripped over a month. This can be dripped over 2 months. I just set it up and let it go. I rarely care about pure relevancy of sites. I think it's really good to cluster your PBN on their niche, but I don't think that increases their strength at all. I think that just increases their livelihood and longevity. So that's just kind of my 2 cents there. But every local site needs citations, directories, image, video links. That's really what Loganics is. That's what I use, and that's what I just hand to a client month 1 every time. So here is where spam kind of plays into this. So if you're inheriting said client, most of those clients have an existing link profile. We already talked earlier about waking up that link profile and then picking the stronger links. And here again, I'm trying to hammer this in, you guys, the Goldilocks zone of Tier 2, which is 100, 200 links to each of those Tier 1 strong platforms. They can take a little bit more links, but like I said, if you stay between 100 and 200, you're going to be seeing gains, and you're not going to be seeing death. And when you start seeing death, that's when you just need to call me and say, hey, I really need your help with GSA, because I'm killing Tier 1s. If you're killing Tier 1s, you're definitely killing money sites. Mm-hmm. So we got to get you off the streets. But that's my basic long-term local blueprint. That's what I start with my foundation. Each client's different. I may add more of the PBN links and see if that's what it needs. Typically, that's the case. I add another 5, I add another 10. That site starts ranking month 2, month 3, if it already hasn't, month 1. So okay. That's typically what I need there, but that's just a major foundation that I try to keep. Here are the local examples for this. This is actually a title-owned site I'm working on right now. And we inherited it in December when right after it got hit. It started getting hit in October. November, the traffic started going lower, and December, it just had a complete fallout. Added a Loganics package, 10 PBN links, and a tier 2 to the existing link profile, and boom, we were back in business in 2 months, and now it's higher than it's ever been. So that's a very, very fun example because it was very easy. It was a couple $100, a few of my links, and we were good to go.
Yeah.
The return on investment for this one is huge because it is in a title loans niche, so we were able to get this guy back up and running very quickly, and we're on a lead gen with him that is doing really well. I don't know how we're ranking in Italy, though, because there's not it must have been an Italian platform that we used or something. I have no clue, but we're ranking in Italia. So here is really the burner side of me. This is short term. I call this the algo. So every time there's a penguin rolling around and they decide that they're going to come in and refresh, that's when the disavow list is completely, I would say, thrown out into the wild, and everybody gets to see what happens. That site that I just showed you was hit severely, and it just kept getting crippled for 2 months straight. But that site was also a churn and burn, and it was really good. So here's what I typically do for churn and burns. I make a 10-page site, make sure that I've got the 5 at the top and the others that I make in a little bit of a silo. With local, and you don't really need it. I mean, you can have that in basic on-site and rank, for goodness sake, but if you want to rank really fast, this is the way I would do it. Decent on-site, just to make sure Google can crawl you effectively. And I make one of the pages incredibly long, 1,500, 2,000 words, sometimes a little longer, where it is the stereotypical. I'm making sure my keywords are in there. I am the keyword percentages are between 2 and 4 for 15, 20 keywords, and I'm making sure that when they crawl me, they know what I'm all about. I don't care if it's a little over-optimized, because it most likely is not, and it won't affect me anyway. So I target each internal page with SAPE, especially the big one, and I have a silo from the other pages directly to that one main page, and I interlink from that page to the other pages. So there's a lot of interlinking going on, but for the most part, that one very long page is the target. So I target each internal page with SAPE, and I tier the SAPE with a little bit of spam and some PBN links. This is the only time I'll buy Fiverr links, but there's a couple providers that have what I consider a tier 2 PBN. This is where you're getting 50 to 100 spun and submitted PBN links. Not all of them are going to be unique, so some of the indexing won't perfectly get them all, but send that tier 2 of PBN and spam to the SAPE. Spam each page directly with the low volume blast, kind of what I was talking about earlier with direct.
Yep.
So you don't want to completely barrage it, but you want to start that foundation to get them going. Now build up about 200 Web 2s and social profiles and interlink them and spam the balls out of them. Add a little bit of PBN direct to that site, and you're going to be good to go. That's what's working right now, and it's still doing very, very well. I will say I do add a Loganics package to those. Sometimes I will just cause for testing purposes, and I have lasted. I know Grind was telling me he got a first review copy last year of Loganics when it first launched, and that site of his was a churn and burn project, and that churn and burn project just won't die. And he told me he doesn't know why it won't die, but he really thinks it's because of Loganics. So
Yeah.
I'm going to give him that benefit of the doubt because it sounds good.
Yeah.
But I will say brand links and good interlinking on the brand links are really where it's at right now. Because local anchors are they're pretty wide open unless you're in some of the stronger niche algos. I mean, obviously, if you're any type of payday, any type of loan, you're going to be a little bit more scrutinized. But you can be pretty liberal with your anchors here. If you don't see immediate movement with a lot of exact match anchors, pillow your anchor text with some GSA and just lower the percentages with brand and URL links. And as soon as you see something start moving again, remember those anchor percentages. Because there's so many people that they tell me, man, your spam just didn't work for me this time, man. And I go, all right, well, let's check out those anchors. We'll check out the anchors. We'll send 1,000 brand URL links to just make it clean. And boom, pops up the next day.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times when you don't see movement in spam, there's been an anchor trip, and you just got to unswitch it.
Got it. You must be killing them with the content, buddy, because we're not getting a lot of questions about clarification. So I think things are going really well. By the way, for all you guys who are out there listening, we're at the 1 hour mark, but I'm not going to cut this off because we have I've got another month's worth of guests stacked up behind Colby, so I'm letting Colby run.
I think I've got 4 slides left that are pretty good. One's ORM, and the other's with 301s. So
brother, it's all good, man. Just keep rolling. I think everybody's digging it.
Good deal. We'll continue then. All right. Here's a local chiropractor that we picked up. We just had the domain sitting, and it had a few rankings, and it was kind of just sitting stagnant in, July and August. And we found a chiropractor that happened to want a lead gen site. And it says the traffic's really low, but most of those keywords are actually much higher than that. Mm-hmm. That site gets 15, 20 leads a month at $200 a pop sometimes. So, when he gets a full back client, long term, we just have a really good partnership. It's nice. But yeah, there's typically 300 to 400 traffic to that site a month of just only targeted keywords. And for some reason, SEMrush doesn't pop up the long tails that it ranks for that bring in much, much more.
Yeah.
So that site just keeps growing.
I don't know if you've seen this, Colby, but I just want to mention this for people who might not be super familiar with the output or the accuracy of the output from Keyword Planner, but it's really taken a nosedive, and I've noticed it even more in the last month or two. Anything local and anything where they register a monthly search volume of, let's say, 200 or less, especially 100 or less, it's so far off it's not even worth regarding. Use your common sense.
And that's what I've been noticing more and more because I use SERPbook, ProRank Tracker, SEMrush. I've got guru level on SEMrush because for a long time it was pretty good. But now the only thing I really use it for is competitor analysis and keyword stealing. But
exactly.
But you can also use SEMrush to see if a parasite's trending or not. So that's pretty nice as well. Throw a property in the URL, push search. If it's got a nosedive down, stay away. If it's got if it's got a hockey stick up, go for it.
Got a couple of good questions if you want to deal with them.
Go for it.
Torin asks, Doc, can you ask Colby if he's using just GSA articles and Web 2.0 links for the 100 to 200 links, or is it broader, including like social bookmarks, comments, etc.?
So it's from campaign to campaign because it depends what type of volumes I'm trying to reach. I can reach most minimal volumes that I'm talking about, like 10, 20,000 links, with only contextuals and socials. So those and a few other platforms get thrown in under them, but for the most part, that's typically what I'm using. For Web 2.0s, just tier 1s, I run FCS Networker as just about as hard as Holly does. I also have a team that builds specific editorial links on high DA platforms that are postable. So I've got a team that does that, and those are great tiers as well.
Okay. Are your Web
A
2.0?
good place to start learning how to use GSA. Okay, the answer was already posted. Yeah,
Well,
loop
that was
lines
my
is
answer,
good.
Colby. If you've got a better one, go for it.
Jacob King's got a pretty good way to do it. I know Matthew Woodward had a pretty good one also. The only bad part about those training videos is everybody runs campaigns differently. So that guy will say, hey, unclick this, 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 and this, but make sure these are this and this is clicked. And there's a lot of buttons on GSA, and there's a lot of ways to customize it. But the way I've always learned software, and the best way to learn it, is to use it, break it, fix it, use it, break it, fix it, use it, break it, troubleshoot it until you know it. Because once you do that, you really understand the software. So you don't have to just continue looking for answers because you've already found them. Loop Lines does have a pretty good, I think he's got a very good area. I think his is good. I would definitely start with him, and if you have any questions, kind of move on from there. I don't know. I've just never really watched any of the videos and found something great. So they're good for a starter that needs to learn how to set up a campaign, but besides that, you kind of just got to figure it out yourself. I gave you the good platforms to use anyway, so
Yeah.
go ahead and use them. So let's, if there's no more questions, we can move on to ORM now.
No, rock on, man. We're good.
All right, so online reputation management kind of puts together everything we just talked about, but on a little bit of a different level. The beauty of ORM is that typically it's brand searches. Occasionally you get a really, really bad client that as soon as they start giving you a keyword that has the word review in it, that's when you kind of got to be weary, because typically in those situations there's 7 to 8 negatives, and when there's 7 to 8 negatives, it is near impossible to fully rid them of all the negative scum about them. But my favorite is brand searches. So recently I've partnered with 2 or 3 ORM agencies. One of these guys he's just a white label guy that just white labels all my spam. He makes sure that his clients he does contingency-based ORM, so somebody comes and says, hey, I'll pay you 10 grand to get all this negative stuff off the front page. He comes to me, says, hey, here's the contingency. I say, split it. I'll do it all for free. Boom. Those are my favorite clients.
Mm-hmm.
But they typically are, a lot of times they're billionaires. I've worked on 4 billionaires in the last 2 months that have, the only negative thing about them was that they were a CEO and they might have avoided taxes some way. So trying to find neutral and more positive news articles and stuff is actually pretty easy for those guys because they're written about all the time. If they sneeze in the wrong direction, there's a negative spot about them. So, those can be a little bit more difficult. But now let's go how to spam in ORM.
Yeah.
What target should you spam, and how? I'm not going to show you how to use SERPWoo. It's a lot more complicated than the amount of time I have. But I can kind of show you an example and then work my way through the first 2 questions I posted with how to use it and what targets you should use.
Okay.
So here's a screenshot of a guy that's in the Blackhat.Community Skype group that came to me for ORM recently. If you notice in the middle, there's a major hockey stick growth of a Wikipedia link, which is highlighted in the left area. And that Wikipedia link was number 29, and the link building started on 210. And we happened to get it to where it's now sitting comfortably at number 2 above all the other negatives. And there's another little hockey stick in the middle that's now taken over spot 5 over another negative. The way I picked these was I went through SERPWoo. I looked for the highest page authority and the highest external backlink count that wasn't spammy. Some of the tier 2s that I was seeing that some of these had that were on the negative side, it looked like somebody had, it just got a lot of natural social shares, and some of those negative stories just started ranking with socials because they just leached the authority of their root.
Yeah.
So the properties that I always try to pick, I love Wikipedia. Wikipedia just loves ranking in Google. I don't think it'll rank forever in Google just because I think Google hates Wikipedia for that and will eventually, they will be the Wikipedia. But good properties for any of these are news outlets. So a lot of people will have to be proactive. They'll have to react to an ORM situation. There's the proactive ORM, which is, all right, I got to make social profiles, I've got to make Web 2.0s, and I've just got to start them ranking for this brand term, right? So if for my marketing company, nohatsmarketing.com, I've built social profiles, I've built Web 2.0s, and I've got them to the point where if something ever happened, I already have my targets. So they're aged, they're indexed, and they've been sitting around for a year plus. And that's proactive because if something bad ever happened, boom, I've got my tiers, they're going to rank within a month. I can get all of that off. And then there's reactive. Reactive is the shit stain of the ORM industry. It's like, hey, a drug. So there's 100 news outlets all saying negative things, and they flood you for like 10, 20 pages. That's when, if you don't have somebody in place, you're screwed. In that case, this wasn't the case here, but luckily he's a billionaire, so he had some positive news stories. Some of the neutrals are like Facebook pages and Twitter pages, but really look for the ones that are the strongest, so the ones that can take spam. Most of the time, just because a property has a high DA doesn't mean it can just take spam just to take spam. Some of these already have good links pointing to them. People have referenced them for education purposes and have good backlink profiles. The more good links you have in a link profile, the more spam it can take if the root's got some strength. So that's really my 2 cents there. Use SERPWoo, go through, look at all of the page authorities, domain authorities, and just try to find ones that are stronger than the others at a neutral or positive variation. This was just a very successful campaign we'd done recently that I think Will is going to have a little bit more budget to play with to completely rid the first page of all the negatives.
Got it.
Are there any ORM questions, Doc?
Nothing on ORM specifically. I answered a couple by typing them in. I think we're still good to go.
Okay, cool. So here is spamming with 301s. I get asked this so many times, and I think this will be helpful for everybody. There are a couple ways to use 301s. You can use 301s as a switch box to turn link juice off and on. If I have a client that's a little shady and he's a little bit sketchy, he doesn't ever return calls unless it's time to bitch, this is the guy that I start building a switch box for. Because he's also the guy that when I track his phone calls and he's got 100 this month, he's going to tell me that he only got 5. So with these, you send your links to a 301, so spam one of those volumes, either low volume 3 to 500 or high volume 8 to 10,000, depending on your want, whether it's long-term or more short-term. And 301 that to an internal page of the site that you want to rank. Internal pages are so strong right now, and they're ranking more than home pages almost everywhere.
Yeah, glad to hear you say that because I found the same thing.
Yeah, so when you're 301ing, a lot of people go, well, why don't you just 301 it to the root, and that root's going to get strong. And I'm like, well, I mean, if I want the internal page to rank, I should probably 301 that to an internal page, correct? It's just kind of rational thinking. So you can also 301 to Parasites. So some people thought that 301s, for a long time, they were awesome. And the algo, they still work well, but now they're more of a velocity buffer. They've always been a velocity buffer when people were setting up 5 or 10 of them and spamming direct and through all the 301s. And they were able to get 100K links in 24 hours and never get touched. A million links in 24 hours never get touched just because they were buffering the velocity. So those are a couple ways to do it. But the most important part about 301s, which not very many people mention, and I've been talking about this since I was a mod at Black Hat Underground, and it's to remember your anchor texts. There's so many people that 301 blindly, 1,000, 10,000, a million links that might be solid anchors, they might be slightly pillowed with a little bit of brand and URL. But what they don't understand is that once you 301 that site to the internal page and or the money site, that other site inherits that link profile. So if your anchors are really jacked up or your anchors are really, really heavy, you're going to see some weird movement in a negative way typically. There are some niches that still get away with sniper sites that are, sniper site is one-page site that's trying to go for one key term only. And they're ranking with 60% anchors, and that's a single anchor. But those are very, very specific cases. Whereas if I'm right now I'm trying to apply to a larger audience among the SERPs. So just remember your anchor text, do basic math. If you've got 10,000 links and 10% of those are one anchor, you're adding 1,000 anchors to your new site. So just do basic math, think rationally, and that'll kind of protect you.
Yep.
Cool. All right, well, here's a little bit of a 301 blueprint that I've been working with for a little over a year. Because most people don't know when to 301, why to 301, or how. So here is my basic, if I'm doing 301 testing and 301 a bunch of turn and burn domains, this is how I would do it. This is how you should at least try to do it, because you're gonna start understanding that it doesn't work every time. And the more and more you test it, and the more and more you get the positives, and you keep adding them up together, you're gonna find the right way to do it. So build 5 sites. I don't care if it's paydayloans1.com, paydayloans2.com, paydayloans3.com. Doesn't matter. Try to get an EMD if you can. Try to get a partial match, but do what you can. They can be brand new sites, expired, dropped. It's whatever your prerogative. I typically like brand new because, to be honest, brand new ranks just as good as just about anything right now. So build out 5 spun pages of content on each of these sites. So it could be Payday Loans online page, Payday Loans now, fast payday loans, quick payday loans, cash payday loans, right? So spam that site at the root and to the internal pages for an entire month. I typically do the 14 days. I call my spamming waves. So wave comes in, crashes on the site absorbs it, goes back out to sea, give it a week, spam it again for 2 weeks, right? So rank track all of these sites and use a ton of anchors, ton of velocity, and apply what I also said earlier with the Web 2.0s and PBN links to internal pages. So build up the authority of these and rank track them all. Every GSA campaign is unique, so what verified last campaign may not verify the next one. So you might have 6,000 links on one, 7,000 on another. And you might have a little bit of a different posting for the next one. So rank track them all and see which one kind of settles at the top. After about a month to 6 weeks, pick the highest ranking site and use it for a money site. So this site has now turned from an absolute spam bomb into a money site because you're going, well, I'm definitely churning this one, and this one seems to have picked up what it needed. So clean up that one site, use it as a money site. Now 301 the best 2 remaining domains until you hit page 1 or 2. So out of those 5, pick the top 3, use the first one as a money site, and use the other 2 as additional link juice. This should hit you to upper page 1, lower page 2, and boom, you're spam with the big boys. This is what we do. This is how we do it. Because everybody that starts and uses one site for tests is missing the picture. If you're not doing some form of mass testing, and 5 sites with spun pages of content with no images and barely any on-site should not take you very long. This is something you can set up in a day and have running exactly the next day. So as long as you're doing it like this, it's pretty easy to play with and also easy to test and test and test and test and test.
This is my favorite slide of the whole presentation for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a subject that interests me, but for all of you guys who may be looking away from on another screen besides this webinar, you'll see the replay, but you might want to come back and make a quick screenshot of this particular page, because this method, testing in general, but the way Colby's written it out right here, could make you a lot of money.
And there's so many niches that this applies to that
Yes.
The algos aren't very good on every niche. People keep forgetting that there's not just one. There's a foundation to the algorithm, but each niche is different. Via SERPWoo, we were able to see, because I was actually the first SERPWoo subscriber, and I was talking with Carter about it 6 months before he even launched it. And the beautiful thing about it was his whole vision was, I want to be able to track a niche on a huge level. And the only way to do that is see data over time. So he has now predicted almost every manual penalty in like 10 different niches just by seeing the data on a large scale. It's pretty incredible, actually. So yeah, there's a lot of niches that you don't even have to worry about manual penalties. And those are the ones that I typically try to stay in, because they might only make $2-3 grand a month, but they're going to sit there forever, and you're never going to have to worry about them.
It's amazing.
So yeah, that's really that's kind of my thought process to things. And sometimes you got to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, but as soon as you see what sticks, you got to optimize and optimize and optimize and optimize until there's nothing left.
I do a variation of this myself for different purposes, and I wind up using it in a different way. But I'll tell you, it gets to the heart of a testing mentality, which I'm telling you right now is the secret to making average money in this business and making incredible money, is being able to isolate for different variables and then figuring out how to use the results to continue testing so that you slowly push away the stuff that's not working. And this is like a blueprint for how to begin that process.
Yeah, and that's one thing where when I was listening to James's webinar last week, one thing I took from it that I do want to talk to a lot of people about, because many won't understand it. When you go to Fiverr for, let's say, a link building package, right? And it's $5, $10. I kind of did a rundown of what my costs are for what I consider like the Cadillac package of GSA, where you are not only running it at a high rate, but you're also spending a lot of money for the quality that you want. And my Cadillac package, bare bones, bare minimum, day one of every month costs me about $500 base. That is just for server, proxies, capture breaker, and everything else that I subscribe to for just one server. So when I see guys selling links for $5 on Fiverr, I kind of have to think to myself, they probably have the bare bones package. They have probably the slowest server, the worst proxies, if any at all, and they're probably running through AA lists that are 3 to 5 months old, which have been in a disavow tool for 3 to 5 months now.
Yep.
So there is, some harm that can happen if you use the wrong type of spam links. Luckily for me, I do have Grind List, which feeds me almost 150,000 identifieds every single day and tons of verifieds. So, I do have a step up above most people just from a setup standpoint, but also from an expertise standpoint. There's many ways to skin a cat, but there's always ways to do it the best.
Yeah,
So,
I think the takeaway from a lot of this is that there are so many people who don't know well enough when they're shooting themselves in the foot trying to save a buck too.
yeah, and there's a lot of people that are just hustlers, and they like when I first started, we didn't have the cash to buy everything. We had to make it. And then once you make it and you have the money to spend on other tools, and I think for the last year, this was our first year of major profits, whereas last year every single ounce of profit went directly back into tools, domains. So there's a lot for saving money. There's a lot of good to be done, but I also know people that their entire agency model is spam, so that then they can sell them on a recovery effort and then spam them again. So there's always a food chain. You just gotta know which side of it you're on.
Let me ask you a quick question that popped up in the window. What server companies do you work with, Colby?
Well, we have a couple. We have for a good VPS that has been running pretty well for us. We use PowerUp for a VPS that our VPS is really our if all hell breaks loose and our dedicated servers stop working, we've got a VPS to get us until we get our new dedi. My developer has everything completely automated for the install process, so it's plug and play whenever we get a new server. But we also use by URL dedicated server. I actually I sent you a link, Doc, that is one of our new services that we're coming out with, and it's a new brand that we've been launching for white label and link building services is Niche Nectar. I just built a little page earlier today for some of the stuff we use. So it's got a link to GSA, Capture Breaker, Grinds List, our dedicated servers, our FCS that we use for some tier 1s, not all. FCS is the only tier 1 that we use that it's more automated. Then we have the dedicated proxies from Buy Proxies, PowerUp Hosting VPS, Indexification, Captchatronics, and SerpWoo for our ORM. So anything that we've used or talked about in the slides today, we've got the slides able to be downloaded via PDF and all the resources underneath them at bhc.nichenectar.com.
Got it.
So, yeah, if I know we've gone over time, but I can field a few more questions if anybody else has them.
Yeah, guys, now's the time. Pop them in the window, or I'm watching the Skype group chat too for the premium members that are there. Give them just a minute, Colby. I see a couple of people talking or typing.
All right. Go for it, because, luckily Mondays are one of my favorite days because we have a policy where we don't come in until 10 on Monday.
Sweet.
Because everybody hates Mondays, so why not make them a little nicer? So I got to come in today, knock out all the work I needed to earlier, talk to you for an hour, and I got a few things I got to do from 4 to 5, but you guys keep hammering me with questions and I'll answer them.
One guy, and this is a good idea, have you set up, is there a way you can share the PowerPoint, or is it okay for me to share the PowerPoint when I post the webinar?
Hell yeah, I've got it. It's downloadable on bhc.nichenectar.com right now.
Okay, well there you go, guys. Go grab the
go for it, guys.
Go grab the PDF.
Grab it,
it's a great
analyze
PowerPoint.
it, add me on Skype, and ask away. I'm pretty receptive. That's actually how most people that are in kind of my inner circle, if you will, have become there, is because they've read something I've written, read between the lines, and asked a few questions. And once you start being able to really analyze things and ask creative questions, you'd be surprised how well you can do in this industry, especially when you're trying to rank. Because creativity is something that's lost for words when people want to be militaristic and have 50 links only, 100 links only, and this and that. And it's a little bit too rigid for me. I like to kind of freestyle it sometimes with things I think will work, and typically they do.
I got to tell you, and I know I've seen you in the group too, but in the group that we've got set up for Blackhat.Community, it looks to me like right now we're at 296 people, which is just a bit shy of the 300 limit. But for those people who may listen to this webinar and may still be on the fence about becoming premium members, all I can say is act quickly and make sure that you capture one of those 300 slots, because if you want to be in a place that's going to make a significant difference in your earnings potential for your SEO career, I'm sure there are other groups, but I can tell you right now, this group has taught me incredible things to help me round myself out as an SEO, and the collegiality, the sharing is just it's incredible. It's unmatched. So if you're waiting, if you're on the fence, man, get in.
When I actually was originally a mod of Blackhat.Community for a little while, and then all of my offline projects started kicking off, and I didn't have the time to continue.
Yeah.
But I think one of the best things I like about Blackhat.Community is there's always content for the members. There's always people answering questions. There's been a lot of guys in the community chat that 6 months ago were complete noobs.
Yeah.
I mean, completely. And they were the ones that, and most people that are in some of the other higher level Skype groups that I'm in, when noobs start talking, typically high level guys hide in a corner. And that doesn't seem to happen in this Skype group, which is pretty nice. People are trying to help people, and everyone's networking one way or the other, and works pretty well. I really like the webinars. I'm glad I could be a part of it, and hopefully I can do another one in the future.
Yeah, it would be great, Colby. Thanks for not only thanks for putting the presentation together as you did, but staying around and staying overtime and answering the questions and all that kind of stuff. It's really helpful. I know people are chomping at the bit to get a copy of this, so I'm going to
Cool.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap
Hopefully
things up.
It doesn't end up in a WSO somewhere, right?
Yeah, no kidding, man. Great, great fabric for a whole bunch of WSOs. But anyway, listen, Colby, thanks again. I'm really grateful. To the rest of you guys who hung in there with us, man, it's amazing. We've got 59 people on, and our peak was 60. There's not too many people that can say that after an hour and a half of a webinar, they had all but one of the peak attendance still there. And I think that's a testimony to what Colby brought to us today. It was really good stuff. For those of you who are regulars and are signed up for the next one, I think the next webinar, I'm pretty sure the next webinar is PBN guru Todd Spears, who's going to come on, and his list of tools that he's created and things that he's done in the business is pretty fascinating. And the fact that he reaches back, I think, something like 10 or 11 years, working on tiers, specifically private blog network stuff, is really pretty amazing. So I hope you guys will join us in 2 weeks on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern for that.
Awesome.
Should be great stuff. So I'm going to stop the recording, guys, and I'm going to sign off for the day. Have a good one.